For people who would disagree with the way that I live my life, is they think that everybody must live this way and everybody has to be non-binary. The funny thing is that we're not asking for everybody to live like that. We're asking for everybody to recognize that it's a choice. And that's what I think people are scared of. Like a Gen Z girl, when you ask them, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? They'll be like, I don't dream of labor. I just want to exist. And it sounds like this annoying kind of privileged, but actually you get a lot of beautiful memories and culture around life being around that, rather than like that quick-paced lifestyle, you know? I literally can't imagine my life if I didn't accept my queerness. There was a serious time where I was like, damn, like I'm for sure going to hell. And I can't imagine living this life that like the Bible says I should live. The moment that I accepted that in my life, my career and my confidence and my happiness and the people around me and the acceptance, like everything just fell into place because I accepted this thing of who I am and who I love, and this is pure. Hello.
Hi, Lava.
Is it Elisa or Elisa?
Elisa.
Elisa. Nice.
Yes. How are you feeling? How are you?
Yeah, I'm absolutely chilling. I've just got back from Barcelona. The great thing about Barcelona is the city starts very late in the day in terms of like nightlife, because it's so hot. So the festival didn't really kick off until 10 p.m. and finishes around 5 in the morning. And it's on like a beach. So when the festival finishes, everyone goes to the beach for the after party, and you just kind of stay there until 10 a.m. and you get the morning joggers and the morning sort of dog walkers on the beach as you're like coming home from the festival. It's really beautiful.
I've been there. It is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what were you doing exactly? Where are you in your musical moment right now?
Yeah, I wasn't intending to play. I am like in writing at the moment. I'm writing a new project. So I'm actually, you know, my team are very much like, get inspired, Lava, you know, it's all about the storytelling in your lyrics. So you go out there and you experience something, and if you're connected with it, you know, the world will connect with it through you or whatever. So I'm just like, sick. I'm just going to go to festivals and see loads of shows. But I go and plan on not working. But when I went there, my other friends who are on the lineup was like, Lava, you're here, you're in Barcelona, you're at this festival. Okay, come do like a little secret set performance with us. And that happened. And I know that the moment I'm there, I'm going to be like, no, I'm just here as a punter. I'm just here for fun. And then I'm going to end up doing like a DJ set or something, just like covering people.
That sounds amazing. Truly sort of magical to actually not be in this kind of what I would gather would be a really stressed out state when you're promoting new music and, you know, and actually in the lineup, but then to just casually join other people that love you and see you and just want to play with you. That must be amazing.
And sometimes I think the best moments come through like pure spontaneity. My guitarist always calls it kismet, that like Turkish word of just perfectly coming together, because I think the best house parties or the best songs kind of happen by accident. If you overplan it, like, I want it to be a really good time, I really want everyone to have fun or whatever. And yeah, I think as a musician, one thing I've been enjoying is, because I'm not technically in campaign right now, I've just been doing lots of like secret shows that have just sort of come up, and I've been like, yeah, cool, I'll do it. Like, I'm not going to overly promote it, but let's do it. And actually the most beautiful moments come with everything just being aligned. So now every time I leave the house, I do have like my USB on me, and my bands have a little set and they're ready to go, and they're just ready for the phone call of like, this weekend we're doing it, this has just come up, like keep it low key. And yeah, it's actually so much more fun.
It's actually really a metaphor for everything. We're so overly programmed and moving so fast to never stop producing, and people are starting to awaken to the fact that doing less and leaving space, having like kind of a different intention is making things happen in a better way.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a cultural aspect to that as well. I think London, New York, LA, like specifically LA, when I go out there, people struggle to see about existing without having to sort of like monetize everything that they do. You know, I don't know if you've ever been to Jamaica, but kind of growing up in a Jamaican household, the culture there is so different. There isn't this like quick pace of lifestyle. It's very much like existing. And it's funny because I remember having a conversation with someone about the difference between like millennials and Gen Z, and a lot of Gen Z now are saying, when you ask them, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? You're like 21 years old, and like a Gen Z girl will be like, I don't dream of labor, I just want to exist. And it sounds like this annoying kind of privileged way of thinking, but actually, exactly, but actually it makes me think of Caribbean culture and like a lot of people just existing, and they take it day by day. And even when like you're at the bus stop, like the pace that the bus is going, it's not like, cool, you've got to run for the bus. Like they'll wait for you and you'll slowly walk towards them. And it's sort of like everyone's just on their own timing schedule. And you get a lot of beautiful kind of memories and culture around it being around that, rather than like that quick pace lifestyle.
Trying. And it's one of those things that it's really kind of messed up, that being is something that there's a judgment around that. It takes a lot of strength, and it takes a lot of belief in yourself to just be, and to leave space, and to not feel that you have to fill every moment, and to move faster than even the universe moves, which, at the end of the day, that's not proving to be something that's healthy. Like, because we live in this massively kind of mental health and physical health unwellness, and from all of that, and being on this kind of train track life, it's all that's just bringing so much misery. And the fact that we don't understand that being is actually so incredibly powerful, and not a superficial thing, or not like actually not really an entitled thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think particularly the people who need to understand that, I find just that in the middle of society, I feel like, of course, you have the stereotype of the people in high society that, just go to like gallery openings and like kind of have a brand, but they don't really need to, worry about making it work or worry about paying rent or whatever, and they can just exist. And you see them on social media and they're constantly on holiday, and you're like, how do you just live this life of just existing? It sounds great, but how do you afford it? And there's many sort of socio-political reasons why they can. And then actually there's people that my parents are like this. They both have lived very like hedonistic lives, and hedonistic like working class life, don't come from wealth at all, but grew up in the sort of like 90s second summer of love, like ecstasy rave movement that happened in the UK in the sort of 80s, 90s, where you could just party every day. And that's what my parents did, and kind of still do. They just exist. They would find ways in their own working class communities to do that, whether it was just, living off food tokens and food banks, and just like being part of their community, so that they could just live this hedonistic life of kind of partying in a hippie way. And I was rebellious against them by being very sort of motivated career-wise, because
that's interesting.
My dad just wants to do magic mushrooms and live on a beach. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about making money. You know what I mean?
That's so fascinating. They have this sort of value of just like living and, I guess, having a good time. So how does that play out? Like in terms of you being are you more driven, more in a different way?
Yeah, the things that I've taken from like my parents is that my dad loves going to festivals, but he would always find a way to just sneak in, whether it was Glastonbury or Festival, whatever. He would try and sweet talk the security. He would jump over the barrier. He would like be one of the performers in the costume. He would find a way to get in. And I kind of loved that, but I was like, I could do that, but there's another way where I could also do that as an artist and a performer, and find a way to not, I don't know, sometimes when it wouldn't work out, it would really suck. And that is the difference between being at the top end of a hedonistic life versus the bottom end, is when you're on the bottom end and you've been kicked out of the festival and you've got like no money in your pocket and you're sort of like eating out of like a, food rations can with your girlfriends and you're worrying how to pay the rent. It does suck. It's not great. And that is a part of that lifestyle that isn't, it's easy to idealize one part. And so for me, it was just security. Like, I just believed that I had the sort of intellect to be able to do that as well. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm smarter than other people. I just felt like I was wise in the way of playing that system.
Can you tell me about what your style says about you? A little bit about what you're wearing, and in general, just what your style says about you?
Yeah, do you know what? It's actually really funny because I just flew in from Barcelona last night. So I really just put on the first thing that was the top of my suitcase, went to my meetings, and then on my journey home, got the email from your producer like, hey, are we still good for the thing today? And then I actually forgot that it was like a fashion thing. So I'm wearing the most authentic version of like generally just threw this on in every sense of the word. But what I'm wearing is an X-Ray Specs merch t-shirt. The lead singer, who is the picture that you're seeing here, is polystyrene. She is one of the first like women of color pioneers of the early punk movement, was in and around the time of Sex Pistols and Clash, but she was, you know, noticeably a you know, mixed race black woman doing that at that time, and it was a very sort of white English dominated scene. Yeah, there's lots of documentaries about her life. She's super cool. And I was in Manchester and found this at a record store, and I cut the sleeves off. Pretty much that, and I'm in my boxers and my denim jeans.
I love that.
Yeah. I don't like to spend too long getting ready because it takes out a lot of time on my day. So I kind of have my uniform, but my uniform is incredibly expressive and layered, and it always has references to the bands I listen to, the subcultures around me, and I think always inherently British. I'm not always trying to like massively fly that flag, but when I go to other countries, I'm like, damn, I dress so different to everyone here. But yeah.
What do you mean by inherently British?
I think that the sort of references are laid in sort of like mod and punk and Britpop. And that's not even, I think it just comes very naturally. I think the best thing about referencing things like mod and Britpop is that I can just put on like a Fred Perry shirt and it's a simple white shirt, but just because of that shirt, like most British people will know all the sort of musicians and pubs and films tied to that sort of like scene, and so it's kind of self-referential in that way.
Yeah, there is something about London, I have to say, for Style Like You, because it's not about fashion at all. It's about style and like how it's so much spirit. It's has nothing to do with like being sold things to you that you don't necessarily like, you know. But London has always been an incredible place for us. We've done tons of different video series, What's Underneath series, and closets and stuff from the very beginning for 15 years. For me, people in London have the best style. It's
Why?
just
Why?
when it's like eye candy. It's like when we're casting and have the opportunity to interview people from London, the difference in our endorphins is major.
Why?
There's just an authenticity. Yeah, there's just everyone is so much more, I think, less consumerist, less compared to here, especially. We're so sunk in the beige, disposable culture of the what the fashion industry is right now. And all along, going to London has been like, whoa. And I see so many more people that are not brainwashed, you know, and have not lost themselves in that way. It's always just is a thrill, honestly. And when you say that, like, this is what you wear all the time, the jeans and the t-shirt and things that refer to things that you care about, or that's exactly what I love. It's not about like wearing expensive clothes or wearing like loud clothes or it's not, it's just, it has to do with being such an expression of who they are so deep on the inside. It's intoxicating when someone is that in touch with themselves and walking the earth with their spirit on their sleeve, literally.
It was interesting when you said that, you know, the difference between when you go to sort of like London and the style, and in America you find it so more consumerist facing in terms of fashion. And I kind of have like an umbrella theory of why that might be, and it completely might be wrong. I mean, obviously there's so many things at play, but one thing I have noticed is like the UK is, Britain is so old, like so much more older than the America that we know today. And not only is there like a really old heritage of tradition and style that dates back, you know, back to the Elizabethan period of when people were trying to dress like Queen Elizabeth. And, you know, that we have like history of fashion trends that like predate the modern America's existence. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
But the biggest thing that is like the impact of fashion and style and subculture are communities, subcultures, immigrant communities, is like, why people wrap their hair the way they do, why people lace a jewelry, why people lace these. The thing that I find so interesting is that specifically UK culture, maybe like street style fashion that is inspired by like Black communities, is that in the UK, most Black people know where their lineage is from and can like incorporate that in terms of their style. So if you are from Caribbean heritage, or if you are from West African heritage, or if you are Somalian, like all these people know exactly where they're from. And so there's like a style of that they can also then bring and mix in with their like British style, like, yo, my family
With Fred Perry
directly. Yeah, exactly. So I'm West African and I can put that together with like a Britpop style. And the thing that I find interesting about some of my African American friends is they don't know, they're American. They don't know where else like their lineage is from. Some of them can do an ancestry test, but generally they're detached from that. All they have is this like very new American identity that doesn't go back very, very far in the grand history of humankind. So what do they have is they have the new America style, which is, of course, it is consumerism in that way, Jordans or Telfar bags or whatever. And these are all cool things.
Right.
And there's lots of great American sort of like history of street style and certain fashion within that, but it's all based around these brands rather than their culture. And I do think
brands control.
Exactly. And I do think that's why it's so much more consumerist in that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you get what I'm trying to say? It's interesting.
I completely understand what you're saying. Like,
it's crazy.
Every cell in my body is elevating right now because I get it so much. As you're saying it, because I'm so visual, I'm visualizing in my mind the mixing of indigenous and cultures like that with the plaid and the history, the Elizabethan. Like personally, I'm American and I don't have any connection really hardly to my cultural background. I mean, none, and it's definitely not in my style. But I do have this huge fantasy world, and I connect so much to Victorian clothing, Elizabethan clothing. Like, I love all of that so much, and it very much inspires the way I dress. I'm like wearing these shoes, but you just grow up with like things that were made by hand, things that tiles and things that were done in a time when everything was very authentic and took a long time to make and has like an intense amount of beauty. And you're walking around and seeing all of that, something that we don't have as much of at all. And then you have all the cultural mixing and indigenous cultures and all that mixed in makes like a beautiful, gorgeous, like spectacle when you go there compared to what we're used to. And it makes me very inspired. Like all those things that made you, your cultural background, your family, your, the streets you walked and all that. And then that is just constantly contributing to you as an artistic person, you as a masterpiece. And I have this sadness around having grown up in the 70s and the 80s in downtown New York, and like this cultural explosion of style and individuality. And it's got a lot to do with what StyleLikeU is trying to do. And it just makes you so happy. It makes you happy to see other people believing in themselves and having that a strong identity to themselves, I think.
For sure, for sure. I mean, that's the thing. When I do watch documentaries and look at sort of like mid-century New York and what was going on, then it does feel like it had that authenticity. But I think that is because also post-war people, if you were of Italian heritage or Eastern European heritage, whatever, you were a lot closer to that because you were like first, second generation sort of migrant. And I do think specifically like the Latin community, they have closer proximity to their heritage living in America, so can still stay in touch with all of that. I think it's very different if you're from any other sort of geographical
if
sort of
you're
background,
diaspora very far away from your roots,
totally.
Which is a lot of America is like. Yeah, absolutely. And were you always so in touch with your style and felt free to wear your soul like that?
Yeah, I see a lot of baby photos of me, and I was definitely I was styling myself. I wasn't just throwing on clothes. A lot of toddlers, if you try and put like a hat and sunglasses on, they just want to take it off. It's uncomfortable. They just want to be free. When you're around little
Yeah.
people, I was the opposite. I loved it. I loved layering. And then by the time I got sort of preteen and I was a bit more tomboy, I was definitely navigating gender a little bit more and how I wanted to present myself and how I wanted to be seen in a room. And I think being called pretty, I didn't like it because I saw it as kind of weak in a way, or just like, oh, but my boy cousins and my brothers are like strong. Why do I get pretty? Do you know what I mean? And then wanting to assimilate in school, in secondary school, high school, as you'd call it. And it went like more on the feminine side because I'm like, oh, but I get more friends and attention if I'm deemed as desirable. So what's desire? And then like, yeah, it was just this cycle of bouncing between sort of femininity and masculinity until I kind of found this fusion of like, oh, let me just kind of reject the binary in that way.
That's really fascinating to unpack. I mean, the
Yeah,
whole
a lot to
wow,
unpack.
yeah, it's so interesting that we're living with this insidious feeling inside that there is an actual way to dress that is actually acceptable or attractive or desirable, that there's any kind of a rule on any of that, rather than what's actually attractive is you being your fucking self, like no matter what anyone else is telling you. Like that's so twisted.
For sure, for sure. And it's interesting because even what we were talking about before about like, it really is London style. And the moment you step foot into other neighborhoods, like there is a criticism or just a fear to stick out or even bring attention to yourself, especially as a young person to navigate, where just feeling ousted or embarrassed is like, it's hard. So you do things to kind of fit in. And I think some people never grow out of that. And I think some people realize no matter where you are, if you are genuinely like so confident in what you're wearing, even if I'm at like a football match surrounded by like 100 English geezers who like, are proper masculine guys, and I'm like wearing my funny little cute football outfit that's like being really weird and alternative, and I've cut things up and I've cut the sleeves off my football jerseys as well, and like they look at me and they're like, you look sick, love, you look so
Right.
good, because I'm owning it and I'm wearing it with a
Yes.
big smile and I look confident and I'm wearing it and it's not wearing me. And even in the harshest of environments, I do believe that if you're like confidently wearing it, it will look good. However, it's a catch-22, because how are you supposed to feel confident when you're first experimenting with something, and just so much as painting your nails a certain way or doing your hair a certain way will like make people turn their heads, and you're trying to gain that confidence but you haven't got there yet because you're experimenting. And that's the hardest part. It's so easy to be like, yeah, just be yourself, everything looks good when you're yourself, but that interim period of figuring out what that is, that's really as many live, laugh, love infographics that we can send being like, you wear it with confidence and anything looks good. It's like, yeah, but how do you get there? That's the real question, isn't it?
That is the real question. That is what needs to be answered to help people.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not a shallow thing. Like even when you show up at this football, did you say football? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
football.
and then you light everyone up because they sense and feel your power and your sense of self, and it makes other people happy. It liberates other people. It gives them something. Maybe I don't have to conform as much. Maybe I am a little of this or a little of that. And it's an awakening of some kind. And so it's not shallow. It's a really meaningful thing to really, literally step into your shoes every day. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about how people, what are the steps?
Yeah, I think for me, it's doing everything you can, like collectively, to make this world a safer place for people to experiment.
Hmm.
It's very easy to be like, well, just don't conform. But I think many cases I know where people struggle, it's because sometimes it's literally not safe. It's literally not safe for them to
Right.
like walk home at night dressed a certain way, even though their outfit looks amazing. They literally can't. And that actually
Yes.
applies for quite a few different demographics of people. And so I've been very lucky in a way. Like my life is very sort of, all the things that make me unlucky also make me very lucky. I believe that. Do you know what I mean? All the things that are like my
what?
hardest.
What do you mean by that?
I think I grew up, and from a very young age, I knew I was queer, but I grew up in a Christian sort of like household with my grandma's side of the family that I stayed with. My parents were very young. My dad was 19 when I was born. My mum was 21. So they were doing all of their hedonism and their partying whilst I was little. So I didn't have that relationship with them, which sucked. But also having young parents, and having young parents who were like party people and just, you know, lived lives so different from that conformist system. They both decided, I'm never going to be a 9-to-5 job person. I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to care about like all these things. In one way, you can look at it like, oh, that must be really hard not having parents who wanted to be in your life like that, or like couldn't. And in another way, it's like, that must be so cool having parents who are like so chill and think in such a sort of alternative way. I was able to think alternatively from very young, and I think I learned that every person that you meet in life, they're all just like animals. They're all just these like big evolved babies doing what they think they need to do to get by. And overall, every person wants, every single human being wants the same thing, which is love and safety and acceptance. Everyone just has a very different way of what they think they need to do to achieve that. And, you know, I think most people could kind of agree that on a base level. But when it starts looking at differences, it's like when people start to feel scared or hysterical when they see something different to what they know, whether that's someone who is, you know, gender ambiguous, or someone who dresses different culturally, or dresses part to a religion that you're not familiar with. That's when we get into a place where people should deserve to explore their identity, their culture. But it's hard to do that when we're living in a society that isn't always a safe space for people to do that. So going back to your original question, I think we need to really let people exist and not be so judgmental. Some women find covering up empowering. Some women find sharing their skin empowering. That's cool. And then that same thing translates to everything. Some, you know, trans people are very sort of, they want to be what people call sort of like passing. That makes them feel good as being passing of a specific gender. Other trans people are completely, can be ambiguous or not passing. Do you know what I mean? And that's okay.
Yes.
I think there's so much discourse of, well, this person isn't feminine enough, this person isn't masculine enough, this person is emulating womanhood, but this is, you know, this is also sexist because why do you have to have big boobs and big, like all this people, all this discourse around that, and people aren't actually accepting like, oh, this makes this person feel good. This is how this person works, and just being like so chill with that. I'm just like, I'm so chill with everything, and it's crazy how much people will spend hours having discourse, and the answer is just like, yeah, just like as long as they're not hurting anyone, just let them exist.
I know exactly what you mean, and I think that it's because we've been brainwashed to believe that there's something broken about us or wrong, something that needs to be fixed. The fact that we're here, we're these powerful beings immediately, and there's nothing to fix.
For sure, 100%. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that as well. There's nothing to fix there.
If we're all meant to believe that there's something to fix, then we have problems, and then we need to buy things.
Totally. That's the unlearning that we need to do, is when people see like a celebrity or a figure online and there's an element of their outfit or how they dress or how they present that they don't like, so they want to dissect it, that thing in their brain, and it all comes back to this thing that they've been taught about that wants that constant fixing, so they have to buy things, and it's their own indoctrination.
And it's challenging to the person, to the judgments just coming from the sense of lack inside of the person. If you knew that you didn't lack and there was nothing to be fixed, then you wouldn't need someone else to be like you.
For sure.
You could accept the other.
Totally.
And yeah, it's so intense and wrong. Like it would just, it's really, but it's so important. You know, it's so important that people understand this, that we've been indoctrinated to feel that we lack something. Like, it's the same with aging. It's the same with everything. How can that be wrong? How can anything be wrong that's coming from a being that has a heartbeat, and that heartbeat is connected to everything and is made from love? How could that be wrong? It's impossible.
For sure. For sure.
You know, seeing the connection to authoritarianism and like how just the stripping of our identities, you strip away one sense of self. You know, you have to do something, you have to change yourself so that you become sort of empty and then controlled and think that you have to then look like and be whatever the narrow little formula is that makes our societies more and more fascist. Anyway, that's, you know, it's heavy. I mean, it's deep. It's like, it's not a shallow thing. That's all I can say. It's not a shallow thing.
Yeah, it's funny though, you say it's deep, but in a way it's also like so simple. Like
So
it's
simple.
so, I always say also the best way to oppress a people is to get them to oppress themselves. And so you just get the, like, that little shed of negativity or doubt, and that's what you've got to be so careful. You know, you always think like, who are these people that like type negative things on like Instagram or YouTube, whatever? Like, how do you, when I don't like something, I'm like, oh, cool, not a fan of that look, whatever. I could never have the time to like write, but because it's so deep in themselves, that need to control is like, you find that in just really extreme examples of like fascism and authoritarianism. And, you know, when people are put in these environments, there are people who are willing to like serve the oppression and oppress people more because they are oppressed themselves.
Is there something that you once felt shame around, that you rejected about yourself, that once you embraced it became a power?
I mean, there's so many examples about that. Oh my days, I don't even know. I'm going to do two. Right. First one, I obviously keep bringing up like my mixed heritage, but it's a huge part of me and my style, so it's relevant. I'm not going to be apologetic for that.
Yeah,
being mixed race, and I think a lot of mixed race people, specifically mixed sort of black and white, could relate to is a lot of the things that I got complimented on growing up in terms of my looks and my features were always my Eurocentric features. So it's always like, oh, you have, your eyes are so light and pretty, your eyes are so green, your curls are so loose. You know, at the time, I mean, I was so young, like since I was a baby, you know, my mum is like brown skin, like dark skin, you know, Jamaican woman. And I came out super fair. And there was many times where that was complimented about me. And it meant inherently at a young age, then some of the things that I might have not liked about my face, it was my blacker features, or when my hair would go really frizzy and it would be more on the side of afro than like soft loose curls, because the range, there was a big range. And it took me kind of unlearning Eurocentric beauty values to let go of that. And I think a lot of mixed race kids go through that growing up. I think especially being a teen or a young person in like the 2010s, the early 2010s, that was one of the first things I had to unlearn. And I learned to really appreciate the elements and the way that my hair will sort of like matte when I don't brush it out. And yeah.
Do you have dreads? Are they dreads?
They're actually passion twists, but it will, like, if I don't do anything to my hair, it will like matte and lock and like turn into like little baby dreads. But also then the moment I brush out and put water on it, and if I put certain products on it, it can go like very sort of European curls. And I've had that full range, which means I had the option to sort of like lean on one side or lean more towards the other and be more ambiguous. It took me that was my own personal journey to appreciate and incorporate into my own style something that was uniquely me. And I feel like now I had the balance of just letting it be as natural as possible. And I don't even wear makeup anymore. I stopped wearing makeup when I became a young adult, and I just kind of like decided to never really wear it again unless it was for like a stage kind of theatrical purpose.
Why did you want to stop? I mean, I think everyone looks so much better without it, but go ahead.
For sure.
Why?
I mean, it's one of those ones I also agree, but also I think people can do really interesting things with it as an expression. I think for me, there was a point where I was wearing makeup going to school just to fit in. I gave it up, one, because the more I started coming into my masculinity and being comfortable, like identifying as a lesbian, I think that I was just like, I don't need to wear makeup. The girls that I'm interested in, they don't necessarily think I'm cute or wearing makeup, so why am I even wearing makeup? Do you know what I mean? And then slowly over time, it also became a thing of like, oh, my skin is so much better now. I haven't got acne anymore, and I just don't have the time. I just can't be bothered. And once you go like 5 months like not wearing makeup at all, like it actually becomes more of an effort to put on, and it feels like now when I do wear a bit of makeup, it's like it's a big deal. It means I'm like going on stage for a specific look, or I'm doing a photo shoot or whatever. And I just, yeah, I think in terms of my gender experience, I was like, guys don't have to put up with this. Like the only time they have to wear makeup is if it's like a big TV thing. I was like, I want to be seen as that. I don't want to have to be asked sort of with all the other stuff. It just wasn't me.
And what was the other thing? You said that was one thing, and then what you said you're going to go with two things.
Oh yeah. What was the first question again? Remind me.
The shame that you felt you rejected about yourself.
Totally. I was definitely a bit of a emo alternative kid growing up. Like now, if you dress a bit goth or emo, like you're cool, but there was a point where you really just got like bullied for that. And I think also being Black and alternative, or from Caribbean heritage and alternative, there was definitely other kids who came from like the same block that I grew up that just thought that was like weird, and there wasn't a lot of representation of that. And so I definitely toned it down, and I enjoyed other elements of hip-hop culture, and I started like, you know, rapping because I could to sort of like fit in, but I did sort of tuck away a lot of like the fact that I loved playing in bands. I loved alternative music because I just thought it was like there just wasn't a lot of like Black emo kids like back then. But that was a short period of time, and then I just became unapologetic again. I'm like, I'm so proud to be sort of from Caribbean heritage and also listen to Metallica. Like, who cares?
It's so fascinating to me. It's definitely like a generational thing where the labeling of things, like I was a this, I'm a that. That's not for my generation. Like that's a new thing. I find it really interesting that someone is alternative or someone is this, or is that also identifying kind of with more than just with dressing? It's identifying with like a way of being.
Yeah, I think it's also not wanting to be like ostracized from your own culture. Like if I put it bluntly, a lot of like my Black Caribbean cousins took the piss out of me for listening to Paramore and having posters on my wall of like white kids with colorful flicky hair. Do you know what I mean? It was on a cultural level.
Yeah. Like it's like tribal in a way. Like
Totally.
yeah, with sexuality and gender. Was that at all something that you were uncomfortable with or had to struggle with and needed to step into that power at a certain point?
Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, the household that I grew up in, for a lot of the time that I was coming to realization with that, was my grandmother's household, and she's first generation like Christian Caribbean migrant. And I mean, even still to this day, I've never been like, oh, grandma, I'm a lesbian. Do you know what I mean? There's this unsaid sort of acceptance, and I think without saying it too much, you know, my grandma very much accepts me. But at the time, being a young person or a teenager, it was really difficult because I did grow up going to gospel church, and I did pray, and I still have my own personal connection with like spirituality and the universe or whatever. But there was a serious time where I was like, damn, like I'm for sure going to hell. Like because I can't even imagine marrying a man. I can't imagine living this life that like the Bible says I should live. Like I've only ever had infatuation with women, and I was told that that was a sin, and it's really scary. It was like really scary being like 13 and feeling like I needed to like confess, or just there being any guilt around something that actually was actually the most purest and most beautiful part of me. And that was the change for me, is when I first like properly fell in love with a woman, just like straight off the back of puberty. I realized this is actually the most pure feeling and comes from nothing but light and goodness, and there must be something seriously wrong with what I've been taught if I for a second think that this is a negative or a bad thing. And everything that the moment that I accepted that in my life, everything that came after that was only like the best thing, and my life elevated and things started, happening to me that I couldn't have even really imagined for myself in terms of sort of like my career and my confidence and my happiness and the people around me and the acceptance. Like everything just fell into the place because I accepted this thing of who I am and this is pure and who I love. And yeah, it all just clicked after that. So it was like a few years of feeling this negativeness of actually something that was the answer to living the best possible future I could.
I really feel that. And that's very, 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 very powerful, what you just said. And that you had that intuition, that voice came through. How could this most beautiful thing about me be wrong? Is like,
yeah, I literally can't imagine my life if I didn't accept my queerness. Like it's so inherent in just everything from the music that I make, the way that I dress, the people I have around me, my partner who is like my absolute rock and soul and just, my better half and the home that we've created together. It's literally the foundation of everything that's good in my life. And insane at the idea that anything ever made me believe that couldn't be the life for me. And it's so like innocent and pure as well. Like there's nothing negative that could possibly come from this aspect of my life. We've been able to just create the best memories and give back to like the people in our lives and build a world for ourselves and be able to sort of inspire or give that to like other people is just like you've really got to question like why is it things like this that why was it even a negative thing in the first place? Like I really think like who actually decided that like to be queer was to be bad? And that then goes back to what we were talking about before. The best way to oppress a people is to get them to oppress themselves. And it all goes back to this sort of like thing of control, because the moment people start questioning these sort of roles that you've been given in life of like, no, you have to marry this way and you've got to be this way. The moment people question that, it threatens the sort of, culture.
Their own oppression.
Exactly.
And then you have to change your whole life. And I think that and what has to change is so dramatic because so many people have been living a lie. The minute you put in people's faces what freedom looks like I'm free and this is me and I know myself and this is what, this kind of level of abundance and joy looks like, to know yourself and to accept yourself. Imagine the freak out level of the amount of people that have been living with that repressed and lying their whole lives. And that's why we have such a messed up world at the moment.
And that is so real, is the moment you accept it, there really is no turning back, because you just see the whole world from a different lens. Just in the UK, we've had a huge regression on trans rights. And the amount that like trans discourse is in the UK media is so disproportionate to the actual statistic of how many people are statistically trans. It's like, why is it always in people's mouths and so controversial and so negative? And the reason why it is because someone deciding to question and not accept the role that they have been given at birth and be like, no, I identify as this. It is the gateway of the moment society accepts that, they can be like, oh, it's all like optional. The way that I've been born, things that I feel like is prescribed for me, the way I must act, the way I must be in society, that is a choice and I do not have to do that. And I simply can opt out.
Opting out of the binary. You're opting at that. It's the binary. You're at odds.
Yeah, for sure.
You're not.
And it's so funny, like even in the conversation being, because I identify as non-binary, and just the mental gymnastics that people can't understand such a simple thing of me just being like, yeah, I've just decided to opt out. It was funny when I was going into this festival in Barcelona the weekend, we were getting like searched by security and there was a male security guard and he was like, are you man or woman? And I was like, huh? Like he couldn't tell. And it was kind of funny because I was saying to my girlfriend, like, in a way that's kind of like a compliment that I always try and see things positively. I'm trying to give an ambiguous vibe. So cool. Like, it doesn't offend me that he couldn't tell. I mean, he was just trying to do his job and he's been told, you know, the women get searched here, the men get searched here, whatever. But I think what was really interesting is that I have just decided in my life to like opt out. I was like, yeah, I'm neither. And that's cool. And that's totally fine. Like, and I'm not trying to be like quirky or anything. Like, I'm just like, no.
What's really fascinating about it is that he perceived your power. He truly perceived the energy from which you're coming from, which is owning yourself. You know, it's not like you shaved your head. I don't know. It's like, it's, you know, or,
for sure.
you know,
Totally.
he truly was confused and wow.
Exactly. That's why I saw it as a compliment.
It's such a power. That's what I'm saying.
For sure.
Wow. It's really stepping outside of the prison, the way it's all been sorted to keep us tame.
It makes you want to not question why, because the moment you question, like, oh, but why does that exist? But why do I have to be that way? Then you begin to realize, oh, it's literally like made up in that sense. In terms
literally
of sort of
made
like
up, and then
everything
everything.
roles. Yeah. And then the moment you realize that's made up, you realize everything's made up. The way you begin to see race, communities, the way you see people in power, the way you see politicians, you don't see them as this sort of like figure that they've told you. You're like, oh, we're literally all on this same level. And like, some people can talk their way into being here and here, but like the moment we see it all as that, it does change. And I think, you know, the misconception, I think that people who have opposing views, if you want to put it that way, to be honest, like, my views are so rounded that I'm like, you can't oppose my views because my views aren't rigidly this or that. But for people who would disagree with the way that I live my life, is they think that, okay, well, because I live like this, then everybody must live this way and everybody has to be non-binary, and everybody is like, the funny thing is, we're not asking for everybody to live like that. We're asking for everybody to recognize that it's a choice. And that's what I think people are scared of. If somebody wants to, you know, grow up as their assigned gender at birth, or be like hyper feminine and be an at-home mom or whatever, that is so fine, as long as she knows that that's a choice. If someone actually wants to identify as a different gender, but they don't want to have to conform to the stereotype of what that gender looks like or whatever, that's also okay. And we don't have to dissect that, and we don't have to dissect the way that they present, or they want to lean into being feminine or masculine or passing. If somebody wants to be non-binary, that also doesn't necessarily mean that they have to look really gender ambiguous. You know, if some grandma comes up to me and is like, I'm non-binary now, I'm like, cool. It's understanding that it's all a choice, and I've opted, cool, I've decided, yeah, realistically, I'm probably never going to be like a quote unquote, you know, at home yummy mummy doing yoga, and that's totally fine. I'm probably never going to marry a man, probably. That's fine. I'm probably not going to really wear any makeup or do any of that. That also doesn't make me superior. That's my choice. But I've just decided to opt out because that's what works for me. And what is so scary, I think, for some people is, I think it looks pretty good on me. I think it's like, oh, cool. Like, I'm happy. I'm having a good time. I'm doing my dream job. It didn't come to me easily. I wasn't born into it, but, you know, I just kind of like did my own thing, and it makes me really happy. In that the moment people recognize that and that it's an option, it breaks down a lot of constructs.
You know what it does? It makes people understand how powerful they are. You choose. You choose. You have choices. You choose how you want to be in the world. And your choices have consequences. It's accountability. It's accountability for your life. It's the most radical thing I think that's happening right now, fully. One of the most radical and exciting things that's happening is accountability for your life. Life just doesn't happen to you. You just don't blame people and sit back and like think something's going to change. The only way things change is if you take accountability for your life and your choices. And it leaves people with that enormous power and that they're afraid of.
For sure.
Wow. When do you feel the most vulnerable?
That's a very good question. When do I feel the most vulnerable? Uh, that's such a good. That's I think one thing that I'm learning is to try and be more vulnerable. I think that because of the way that I was raised, and also being like an inner city kid in London, and also being queer, and also coming from like a migrant family and like a gospel Christian family, and I've been raised with extremely tough skin. Often when I feel vulnerable, I double down and I kind of toughen up a little bit more, and when I feel a bit scared, I get sort of like louder, and my voice gets more gruff. So often I don't realize that I feel vulnerable in a situation until hindsight, when I realize, because I kind of get louder and like tougher. But I think when I am in a situation where I realize that there is nothing I can do to sort of like change or help. I'm always like, I'm the man with the plan. And there's sometimes you are in situations where you have to accept, at least not today, or in this situation, there's nothing you can do to sort of like help out. And yeah, I often very rarely cry about personal things. I often cry about like societal things. Like the last time I remember crying, it was all about like what's going on in the world right now. And the acceptance of like, right now, today, there is nothing I can do to immediately change that. That's a difficult thing to accept for people like us who care so much. You can spend your whole life just trying to be like a warrior in that front, and there are certain situations I'm like, wow, there is nothing I can do right now to help this, and that sucks, and that makes me feel really sad and soft, and I don't even want to. I can't, like, I'm not even angry because I can't, there's no one to fight because it won't change anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's
I really
probably when I feel
do.
most
I really
vulnerable.
identify with that. I identify with that a lot. Like, I actually struggle with that so much. And in a way to sort of cope with it, I have come to try to accept that pain is just part of life. Like that's what helps me. That's what helps me because it's so unbearable. So the only way that I can deal with it, or I've come to learn how to deal with it, and you're right, it is so vulnerable, extremely vulnerable, is to just try to accept, okay, well, I've had so much of my own, and I've dealt with it. I've figured it out. And those situations are finding their way, somehow it's part of healing and part of love and part of life. And yeah, it's kind of like growing up in a way. I think like my younger child self, which was more like even just 6 months ago or a year ago, like couldn't accept and was having tantrums around all of this. But I think maybe accepting that it's just part of it all, and that
Yeah,
it's a
for sure.
teacher. And yeah,
Totally. It's tough though. It's hard to do when you just
very
like
hard.
you're such like a fixer mentality. Like, yeah.
And you see the better way. But that's such a great answer, a beautiful answer to vulnerable, because it's so true. You make differences just in being you in your little things. Like you
Yeah,
can make differences in how you live your life.
for sure. It's just finding that balance, because you can also get so wrapped up in the little things you fail to see the bigger picture, and then you can get so wrapped up in the bigger picture you fail to like do the little things to build up there. It's that balance. I agree.
I understand how you feel. I really do. And when do you feel the most beautiful? Or is that word a problem? I mean, you don't have to answer that.
No, not at all. It's not that thing was like, I don't mind that, especially like in that context, because I think everything and everyone, no matter what you are and how you identify, there's a moment where you can feel beautiful, because in the way that like life is beautiful, you know what I mean, rather than pretty. But
It's not pretty, yeah.
yeah, for me, the most natural state of like sort of like sun glow, like first thing in the morning or end of the day, and that sort of feeling of anticipation where you know you're about to sort of like see your people do that thing. There's kind of this like invincibility of how you feel in that moment that I think is the nicest. Yeah, I like, this is so corny to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. But because I don't wear makeup, like my best foundation is like perfect sunlight. Like the moment there's like perfect sunlight in that environment, like my skin and the way I feel like I've had that full, I don't know, the same feeling if someone has like the perfect face beat on or whatever, the perfect outfit, whatever, that for me is like that missing recipe of just feeling like really good. When I do like a festival performance and it's like sunset performance, I get that golden hour, I'm like, oh, I feel like absolutely top of the world superhero because I know I look so good right now.
It is so true. It's like you can't
It just
even
makes
bottle.
everything look better. It's
You
like,
can't
you know,
bottle it. Yeah,
the heavens have color graded your environment. Like it's like life feels like a movie, and like the heavens is like
so true.
Perfect color grade filter on life, and everything just looks perfect.
It really is. Perfect. You can look like a totally different person.
Totally. I just also know like any photo taken of me at that point is going to be like the best of anything.
Exactly. Whereas in the middle of the day, ooh. Yeah. And then last question, what would you say to your younger self to not change?
I ironically know that like in terms of giving advice to my younger self, that like my younger self wouldn't take any advice from anyone because my younger self was so cocky and so like, this is my vision, this is what I'm going to do. So if I was giving advice to my younger self wouldn't take it. And I would also advise my younger self to just keep being that way. Like, yeah, don't listen to anyone. Just don't listen to anyone. Like, just streamline, hyper-focus, tunnel on like what you're trying to do because you're on the right path. You're chilling. Like, I had the right balance of sort of needing to work because I could be like, hey, everything's going to be all right. Don't worry about that. But then I wouldn't want to demotivate my younger self because I had that perfect balance of like, things will be all right, but I have to make it happen kind of vibes. So yeah, I liked how rebellious my younger self is. I could probably take more from that.
Definitely, just to be more of who you are and stay there and just keep going.
Yeah, I wouldn't listen to some old person like me today.
Yeah, they knew, they know what's right. They know.
For sure. Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you so much. This was absolutely amazing. I knew I was going to have a great time with you, and I did. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, let's do this IRL. Sweet one. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so nice to meet you, and thank you very, very much. Appreciate everything.
No worries.